My first PTSD episode, I was already back. I want to say, I think it was in Rota, Spain, rotating back to the world. Um, it's just like, all of a sudden, a clap of thunder and lightning hits your back. You're like, wow, but you're not freaking out. You're just like, wow, that was something. Later on, it was creeping up because I saw other guys that had a more harrowing experience than I did for a lot of other things, and they were falling apart. A lot of them drank.
Hi, welcome everyone. This is a YouTube and Rumble show called The Modern Healer's Journey. My name is Tammy Bennett. I'm an Oriental medicine doctor. I'm the host of the show, and I also practice in Central Florida, seeing patients using traditional Chinese methods and acupuncture and other functional medicine therapies to help people get well. We're here to explore and empower ourselves with regards to health and wellness, and today we're talking about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And I have a guest with me today. His name is Tim Patrickson. Tim is a veteran of the Navy, and he's here to talk to us about PTSD and how it's affected him. Good afternoon. So, Tim, if you would, tell us how you got into the Navy.
Let's see. My father kicked down my bedroom door and told me to get out and get an apartment or join the military. And he was he was also a correctional officer. So I wasn't doing anything wrong, so to say. I ended up finishing high school about 6 months early, and I started working. And then I hang out with my friends. He wanted me home by a certain amount of time. Very frustrating father-son situation, which happens to all of us. And one day he saw that I had come home when I was supposed to have been, and he kicked down the door and gave me that ultimatum. So when I ran out of friends whose couch I could stay on, I reluctantly walked up to work and talked to a friend that was going in to the military, and I said, I got no choice. And basically that's how it began.
And you chose the Navy, why?
I'm a third generation military person. I can't talk today. Wow. In the construction field, Navy Seabees. My grandfather was an original recruited as a civilian. And then my father went in, and then me. So I guess, I didn't really think the Army was for me.
Okay. And
the other guy that I was working with, he said, "Yeah, go to the Navy. You get this belt buckle." I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool."
I'll get the belt buckle.
And, it was definitely a life-changing event. I wasn't a kid that got in trouble or anything like that. I was just basically going to work and hanging out, and he didn't want me to become a bum.
Gotcha. So you got into the military, you go through basic training, and then what?
I go home on leave. A buddy of mine in Utica, Ray, he came home to see my family with me, and then I went up to see his family. And his father, Big Ray, told us that we were going to have a good time by going a trip. Man, I can't talk. What is going on? Let's break it for 1 second. I'm just got to take a drink here. I'm like,
yeah, go right ahead. Relax.
I need to. No, I just feel like, I'm very antsy all of a sudden. I don't know what that's about. So anyway, I went up to Utica. His father, who has since passed away, very few people I allowed to call me Timmy as an adult, but Big Ray, he did it with respect. And he said, "Timmy, you're going to Vegas. You're going to have a good time." And he sent us out there. I come home. I'm going to spend some time with my girlfriend. And my father's got this look on his face. He said, "Are you supposed to be home? They called 3 times today for you." I called where I'm supposed to call. I was supposed to report to Virginia in another 4 or 5 days. And they're like, "No, next available transport, get to the airport. There's a ticket waiting for you." And I had no idea what went on. Next thing you know, within a week, I was in Beirut.
Wow. So you go to basic, you get invited to go to Vegas, you're in Vegas, you come home, and then your dad says, "You're not supposed to be here. They're trying to find you." And they send you right to Beirut.
No. Report. You don't just hop a plane like that. You have to have training, which at that point I had none. I mean, I could do a lot of push-ups.
Yeah.
That was about it. I had no formal training. But they sent me down to Little Creek, Virginia. I met up with other people. I got my sea daddy, and that's basically an older person who looks out for you, and he's somebody I highly respected. And so I was his tag along pretty much, and he wasn't just like stand here do this. He would take the time and say, "This is what we need to do. This is what we say. This is what we don't do." He was showing me the ropes, and we finally get over there. About 2 weeks later.
And so that's when you land in Beirut.
Yep.
Okay. And then what happens when you land? Do you get special orders? Does your sea daddy tell you?
No, I knew that I was assigned to a specific battalion.
Okay.
So it's main body because they're coming over an air detachment. Everybody's racing. I'm following because I don't know what I'm really doing. I just go over here, get on this flight, unpack your bags. This is your rack. This is where you stay. And we all know what happened in Beirut with that bombing.
Yeah. And were you witness to things that started the episode of PTSD? Is that what happened?
My first PTSD episode, I was already back. I want to say, I think it was in Rota, Spain, rotating back to the world. It's just like, all of a sudden, a clap of thunder and lightning hits your back. You're like, wow. But you're not freaking out. You're just like, wow, that was something. Later on, it was creeping up because I saw other guys that had a more harrowing experience than I did for a lot of other things. And they were falling apart. A lot of them drank heavily.
Yeah. Did you ever drink?
Oh, sure.
Did it help?
I started drinking when I was a kid because we weren't allowed to. It was illegal, so we just did it on the sneak. Then everybody in the military drinks. Well, you get promoted. They hit you on the arm because you get that chevron, so they tack it on for good luck, and you got to take a shot. And by the end of the day, your arm is like this, your head and gut is like this because it was a ritual that when I got promoted, I had to stand on a ladder. Well, what rank are you? I'm like, well, I'm E3. Go up 3, take the shot that's on a hook, and all right. Then they ask you questions. The idea is this mattress is all over the place because you're coming down.
Okay.
So you socialize, you drink. Today it's kind of frowned upon. And there's a lot of people I know that it got away from them.
Yeah. So let me go backwards again so I have the timeline. So you join, you get thrown into Beirut. How long were you in Beirut?
Not a month.
Okay, not a month. And then do you come home?
No, I went back to Rota, Spain, where all this equipment is either coming or going. There's no downtime during this period. We get hours off, or maybe we got a 1 weekend day off. But it was hustle and bustle. I was probably, I got to think about this timeline. So that was October. So November, I probably got back just after New Year's.
Okay. And then, so Beirut, Spain, home to the States?
Right.
Okay.
To Virginia.
And then do you deploy again somewhere else after that?
Not at this point. The way it used to work is you have a home port, and home port is either Gulfport, Mississippi, home of the Seabees on the Atlantic Fleet, or Port Hueneme, California. And there's so many battalions. So you would stay 7 months at Homeport doing maintenance, your everyday job. And then 7 months you would deploy, in my case, it was Puerto Rico. So I'd go for 7 months to Puerto Rico, come back to Homeport for 7 months, and then Sasebo, Japan.
Okay.
So that's what the main body does. But if there was a special project or something needed getting done, I would get tasked with a lot of that. So when I was doing reserves, I was never home.
Okay. And did you ever go back to a combat situation again?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So your first PTSD episode, did it happen in the time where you came back to Homeport, or when did it happen? Do you recall?
It happened to me in Rota, Spain.
In Spain.
Yeah, once, and that was, I wasn't deployed there for. I'm thinking it's just under 30 days, so we'll say a month. So
Okay.
I rotated back to Spain, and then I came back to Little Creek, Virginia. I want to say before February 1st.
Okay.
I took some leave. I went back to New York, and then I was in Virginia.
Okay. So tell me about the Aqua Velva thing. You said that there's a trigger that triggers your PTSD,
Yes,
and it's a smell.
there's a lot of triggers that I have because, as you know, and we'll eventually get to, I had a lot of traumatic episodes that I either saw firsthand or saw the aftermath of. And I'll give you an example. While I was deployed for the first time with my sea daddy, Tommy, the smell there, you'll never forget it. You will never forget the smell. So he saw that I was gagging and trying to, be a man and not retch, and he takes a handkerchief out and he has some Aqua Velva ice blue aftershave, and he sprinkles it on. Put this around your head, kid, and it worked wonders. When I was going through the corrections academy, we were talking about PTSD, and I shared that experience. And this young, inexperienced kid thought it was going to be a good idea that he would go get some ice blue Aqua Velva and pour it around the floor by my desk. But thank God he didn't do that, because we both would have been fired. And another officer pulled him to the side and said, "You better have more respect. If you do that, you don't mess with that."
Yeah.
And
So the Aqua Velva, I'm gonna, in my mind, and you don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but in Beirut, I assume that this was the smell of death.
No, not. You can interpret that for some. For me, it was like when as soon as the plane door opened, I was like, "This place stinks. It looked crappy from the air. What is that smell?" And they were like, "Get used to it. Sometimes the wind's going that way, and it's worse to be getting sand blown up in your face."
Gotcha.
From the wind. So now I was involved with 9/11 at World Trade Center. I was on the phone with people. And some of the things that I saw while deployed to Kosovo, I can't deal with large crowds. Can't deal with it. When the Super Bowl was in Tampa, I think was that 2003, something like that, I had to leave. Someone took me to the, but I couldn't deal with the crowd. And that was, I think, 2 years after that. Piles of shoes. I cannot see a pile of shoes. My mother-in-law used to make my nieces and nephews take off their shoes and leave them by the front door. And one time I came in, I saw them, I turned around, I ran back out. And people were like, "Well, what's up with the shoes?" But a lot of people, if you're not from New York, the city, don't know that. But you yourself, you wear heels sometimes. In an office setting, you would wear heels. But when you have to navigate through public transportation, you have sneakers and you have the pumps probably in a drawer and the office, and you just switch out. When it's time to go home, sneakers come back on and off you go. When the World Trade Center fell, that after we had gotten there, because I got activated that 2 days later, that's all I saw was shoes.
Gotcha. So I want to be clear with the audience. With PTSD, when I've worked with patients, both veterans and non-veterans that have PTSD, smells, which is the oldest primordial sense of smell, right? When we were hunters and, we had to find food, we smell, that's a very important sense. A smell can be a trigger, whether it's, like I said, someone smelling what they feel is the smell of death, or if they smell something, like, for example, I've had somebody who even comes to see me and is a certain kind of food that triggers PTSD, and it has to do with an abuse situation with her ex-husband, and it has to do with a smell that she smelled when she was being abused by her ex-husband, and that brings out her PTSD. So not only smells, but things that you see, also like sounds. I know sounds can be a big deal.
Yes.
Maybe you can talk to me about sounds, because I think if I remember correctly, talking to you before, were there sounds in Kosovo that brought back some
absolutely.
issues?
While we were talking first about Beirut, I was actually, when I said, "What is that smell?" I smelled it again. You can't see this, but the hairs are standing up on my arm right now. And then when we talked about the World Trade Center, I was talking about the shoes. I actually smelled that dirt and dust in the street, and I'm right now even smelling the smoke.
Right. Now, I want to be clear for folks. So, what year did you get out of the military?
I retired 2006, December 19th, 2006.
Okay. And then how did you end up a 911 operator in New York during 9/11?
What had happened was I was doing reserves at the time, one weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. That was never me. I was always going somewhere. Because I had a union job, I used that to the max. I'm like, oh, they got some duty in Hawaii for 3 months? Yeah, I'll go. I need orders. Give them to the job. They got to keep my job, my seniority. Everything works out well. I went to some nice places. I went to some not so nice places. So what had happened, I'm trying to think exactly the starting point for this is, how did I get to, my primary job was phone operator, and I was a supervisor. I had just gotten home from Kosovo. I was walking wounded. I had an injury to my foot. I had a desk, just like here, a keyboard and a headset. And the whole PTSD thing was still going on from Kosovo, but I was okay. They were medicating me and whatnot, and I was very hypervigilant. And I liked the idea that I worked in an office. And some people knew better than others of my situation, so I was being looked out for.
Okay.
So I'm at work, and I just sit down at my desk, and it was weird. It was a gorgeous day, not a cloud in the sky, feeling pretty good that day. And I sit down, and I put on my headset, and I was in the supervisor position. So those people that know 411, it takes sometimes you're on hold waiting. I would get maybe 10 calls in an hour where the operator is getting them like this. So the office is a lot of hustle and bustle, and I'm in a cubicle. So I'm just reading the newspaper, whatever, and I see something's going on, and a call comes in. I said, supervisor, assisting the operator in training, how can I help you? And she says, send help quick. A plane just hit my building. And I said, ma'am? And she said, can't you see me? I'm thinking, now I'm dealing with a nut. You're on the phone. I can't see you. So I look around. There's a lot of people. I go, where are you? She goes, in the World Trade Center. And I picked my head up. I said, the World Trade Center got hit by a plane? And they go, where you been? That happened 5-6 minutes ago. But because I was out of the whole bustle and flow of message traffic, this is how I found out about it. But then we were just like, they said, yeah. It's a little plane smashed into the towers. I was like, okay. And I went back to doing my thing. And I took another call, and I'll never forget it. Guy asked for Cushman Wakefield, East Main Street, Enfield, Connecticut. I said, I'm checking. And he says, boy, I bet you guys are hopping there. And I'm just going to my keyboard like this. Yeah. And he tells me, I'm in Tower 2. And I hit stop calls. So this guy is locked into my computer. It would be like a bomb threat. It's a digital footprint. He can't escape. And I said, guy, what are you doing? He said, I was here in 93. He goes, when the damn thing went off, when the truck exploded down, he goes, I got down 2 floors. They gave the all clear. And he came back to the office. And he wanted to get a jump on his phone calls. So I said, dude, if I was you, I would get out of there. And he's like, yeah, it's no big deal. He really was, I was more, hyper vigilant than he was. So I said, all right, I get him his number and I go. Before I hang up, because I put my stop calls on, so I have to undo him. Before I do that, plane 2 slammed into the tower. I freaking heard it. I heard it. The only thing was, we didn't disconnect. Did you say something?
No, I was waiting for you to tell me what happened with the disconnect button.
So we're locked in. So I leave the stop calls on so him and I can still talk. I told him, I have your number. If I get disconnected, I will call you back. I'm scratching little scratch paper things he's telling me. He knew that plane hit below him. He knew that he wasn't getting out. He asked me if I could get an outside line for him, and I said, "Don't hang up." So when you get a 911 call, here's the emergency you call 411 by mistake. Here's a 911 dispatcher. I can't disconnect both. I have to let them talk through me. So I told him, "Wait, I'll conference call." All circuits are busy because everybody in the world was on their phone, and I couldn't even get like a voicemail. He never got to say goodbye to her, but he told me things, things that only husband and wife would know, where you might suspect I'm a fraudster, because there was plenty of that going on. But she hung up on me the first time. It took me 2 weeks to call her. Let me back up, because this is where there was a PTSD episode. Because now, this is on Tuesday, I get up and I go call my reserve center immediately and say, "I'm alive, I'm here, da, 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 da." He goes, "Okay, if you work for a municipality of any sort, stay there. We know where you are, that's where you need. If we need you, we'll reach out to you." Okay, I'm just going to check in regular intervals. Anybody's family needs something, call me. Because now Tanya is in Florida.
And Tanya's your wife?
Yes. Okay. She was with her family in Florida. I assured them I was fine. And I went to pick up the phone to call back my reserve center for something. And this young kid on a break, sitting in a corner, basically just said, "Oh, calling the reserve center again? I bet you're going on vacation again." And I went, "What? Are you kidding me?" I hung up the phone, and I was like going for him. "Do you know how many people are dead? One of these things, I heard it fall. You saw it in here fall. Are you kidding?" So it just, I must have really scared the hell out of me, because they told me there was a phone call for me in the locker room. I'm like, who's calling me in there? And what it was my shop steward, who basically said I scared the hell out of everybody. And they weren't sure what to do. He told me, "Get in the car and call him from the car." And I did that. And then they sent me to they found out my diagnosis was PTSD. And they found out that I was being treated for it. So they didn't want me back at Verizon like that until their psych said okay. And I was out for 4.5 months.
Yeah. So let me go backwards for a second. When you got out of the military and you were on reserves, you were already being medicated by the VA for the PTSD, correct?
Yes. I was first medicated, I want to say, end of 2000, 2001 for actual medication, not just counseling.
So for those of us that have never been medicated for PTSD, what do the medications do for you?
Well, it depends. I have anxiety, so it'll relieve anxiety. I have trouble sleeping, so I take something for that. It gives, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
So outside of medication, what did you try to do on your own to help with the PTSD symptoms? What were your self-help?
What had happened was, when I had gotten hurt, they had me on medical hold in Gulfport, Mississippi. And I was there for a year with nothing being done. Absolutely. They let me swim in a pool. And don't forget about the ice and the aspirin we gave to you. I'm like, "Oh, gee, I can take that at home." So I'm not with my guys in the military, so I don't have that brotherhood. There's so many. I was well known in the CB community because I went everywhere. So I used to cross paths with people all the time. But it wasn't my guys. So you kind of, sick bay commando over there who won't go home, they got to fix it. I'm not falling for that. I waited them out. And so when I used to have the night sweats and I get upset, I would walk around the base. I mean, walk around the base. I was such a familiar face that security used to flick the lights when he would drive by at like 4 o'clock in the morning. It was crazy. I had an incident over in Kosovo where a little girl was involved, almost got chopped in half with a weapon. And thank God that did not happen. But I kind of blew a fuse with that. So sometimes when I was on the medication, I come back from a walk, I take a shower, maybe that'll relax me. No, I start taking things out of my closet and looking under the bed. I'm looking for this kid. The girl she was fine, but I mean, and this was a year later. So this kid visited me in my nightmares all the time.
So did you know instinctively that exercise like creates endorphins?
Yes.
Did you know that walking would help elevate your endorphin and keep you feeling better? And then also with the medication, did you have any side effects? Was anything off with the meds?
Sometimes I would like talk out loud what I'm thinking, and I'm like, "But I don't do that. What the hell's wrong with me?" It made me a little jumpy sometimes. Before it would calm me down, it would be just nutty. Sometimes a performance at home was interrupted.
Okay. Did they give you subsequent therapy, like talk therapy, with the meds, or was it just meds?
No, what I did was I was feeling really, really bad. I went to the person who was in charge of me, and I said, I need to talk to you. And she said, what's up? And I told her what. She goes, well, you know what? You may want to think about this. If you go down to the Navy and you tell them what you just told me, they're going to put you into observation or whatever it is they do, because they want to get rid of you. You're a reservist on active duty. You're just taking up space. They don't even want you here. But you're going to go tell them something like that, they're going to ship you home. And you probably won't be able to re-enlist. So would I have had a disability? But it's all documented. So repeat that question again.
So my true question is,
the endorphins.
You received medication, but did they give you therapy with a psychologist or a psychiatrist? Did you have talk therapy with someone?
I did, but it was a joke. And I'll give you an example. So the woman that advised me, she goes, go down the street to the Air Force Base. They have mental health there. Walk in, show your ID, and this base will never find out about it. Perfect. So my first instance, here I am. I'm trying to tell the situation about the little girl and to this colonel who's screening me. Full bird colonel. And while we're talking, she turns around. She says, excuse me, I hate to interrupt, but I have to stop you. I really need to take this call. It'll only be a minute. And I said, okay. Well, whoever she was talking to, I assumed it was family. When she turned around, she fell apart. She was in tears. Now I'm saying to myself, how does the head psychologist fall apart? You know, granted, we're all human. But I thought she would have asked me to leave the room but I dominated that whole thing. When they gave me to an up-and-coming lieutenant, she was only in her 20s. And I asked her straight up, I said, ma'am, how much time do you have in the military? She said, oh, I just went to the range the other day. I've been in 4 months I've been here. And I said, so you've never even deployed? And I said, respectfully, I can't relate to you. We'll never have a rapport where you understand what I'm talking to without an interpreter. And
so you mentioned something. I want to mention something to that point. You talked about the brotherhood and you put your hands together like this about 10 minutes ago. Did you end up finding group therapy with people that have PTSD like yourself at some point finally?
Yeah. And mostly they were veterans or veteran groups, because they can relate to what I'm doing. I mean, I couldn't tell you anything about acupuncture except I let you do the acupuncture. I wouldn't tell you how to do it. I may, whatever. But it's more at home where you can talk. It's a safe spot, because what I didn't want to have happen was the Navy turn on me and say, guess what? You're promoted to flower pot and we're putting you in a rubber gun squad. They're just going to let you discharge, go out, and off you go. Maybe you get benefits, and maybe, I've seen that happen to people. But I had a lot of people in my corner, a lot of people. I was getting screamed at by high-ranking people where I had to get my state senator involved, and I had previously met up with her, so she helped me out.
Okay. So fast forward then, 9/11's over. You've done your time with Verizon.
So let me just add here. It was my third day back to work that Tuesday. That Thursday, I was standing at ground zero.
And was that with the reserves?
No, there was no reserves that day. The whole world was
Okay,
activated.
so just as a private citizen is what you're saying.
No, I showed up in Milton. My unit got activated.
Oh, okay.
So the call went out, but I didn't get any orders because I was walking wounded on my leg, so they had me on the disabled list. So I said, no way. I cut that bandage off my foot. I bandaged it again. I put a sock over it. I put more duct tape, and I got my friend Danny, who was a size 14. I said, I need your left boot. And I put it on, and I showed up with everybody else. I was carrying my medical records. All they were doing was throwing them in a box. We got on a bus. We had our bags. They took us across the bridge, and I found out we were sleeping. And by the end of the day, they found me out. They were like, and they sent me home.
Okay. So fast forward from 9/11.
Okay.
You're done with your work with Verizon, and you're living with PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
Do your medications change? Do they do new ones? Do they shift them around? Do you get more therapy? What happens to your PTSD from there?
What had happened was my medications were constantly changing. And my wife, who's a nurse, was like, what the hell are they doing? It seems like every time you get a doctor, they change it. Or I had medication bottles, I swear, they were this tall, the big fat ones. And they said, take every this was Oxycontin for the pain of my foot. And they put on the label, take every 2 to 3 hours. And it's a 30-day supply. How many pills is that? Oxycontin. And it had 5 refills. And we had to...
Was that at the same time you took PTSD meds? Because sometimes they don't mix either, right? So
but Tanya was all over that. She would actually ask the doctor. She'd be like, why is he up? Well, we feel no. And, some things worked. Some things didn't. There was a lot of frustration there. It was a lot of frustration.
I can imagine. So you're now, let's see. Do you become a corrections officer like your father at some point?
Yes. I took the buyout option at Verizon. I had enough time in. And what had happened was, as they were letting people go, I was all the way up here on the seniority list. And pretty soon, it was either jump or get pushed. So I waited till they sweetened the pot. I took the buyout option. I moved to Florida. And people will say, well, what are you going to do? I said, nothing. I didn't even have a disability yet. They didn't even rate me for disability. So I took the buyout money, packed up everything I had, went down to Florida, and I said, I got to think about doing something, but I'm not sure what. I know I was on the list for NYPD a couple of times. I was going to apply to be a deputy down here, but at that point, I'm thinking to myself, I'd probably get into a situation, knock them, drag them out, chasing people. The foot's not going to hold up. So I settled for corrections because you can't outrun a radio. There's a fence around you. And I just ran to the max with that. The thing that was explained to me, because I said earlier, I can't deal with crowds, but how in the hell am I a corrections officer? And it was...
That's what I was going to ask you.
So I'm thinking to myself, why is that? So I asked my doctor, and he says, think about this. You don't control a country yourself, but you control that yard. And you're not doing, a country of people. You have a dormitory with 70 to 150 people in there. And you click the lights, and they know if they don't do what they're told, they're going to be dealt with. So that's a controlling thing for you. And I use that, because if someone was in my situation and told me, I'm a CO and I can't deal with crowds, you're in the wrong business.
So your father was a
Yes.
CO. And so did that inspire you to want to do the CO thing in Florida?
Actually, when my family's full of law enforcement first responders, so there was no way I was not going to have some type of background. I will tell you, though, I went to the Corrections Academy from 1980 at the breakfast table when my father would come off shift. And he would say, see this guy here, going to do that. So when I went to the academy, for real, I was one up on it, like, a lot of crap. And I was like, and drilled in my head. My father knew I was going to be a CO. I didn't. I had no idea.
So how long were you a CO before you had a PTSD episode at work, if you ever did? Did you ever?
Yes. When? How far in? Is it?
Yeah, like a week,
No.
a month, a year?
Anybody that works law enforcement will tell you, or works corrections, you never forget the first time that gate clangs. You never forget. Some people have gone to work, brought their lunch bag all the way into the dormitory down the way, and they come up and say, "Oh, I got to get a soda out of the canteen," and they call from their car and said, "I quit. Keep my lunch bag." So yeah, you don't ever forget those surroundings. I was always concerned. I was. I'm not. I wouldn't say afraid. I was concerned at times. Have there been terrifying moments? Absolutely.
So through your work as a CO, based on you and I talking, about the PTSD before, you had some situations where you had to get involved with hostage negotiations.
Yes.
Or you became a hostage negotiator through your work as a CO. Can you explain that?
Yes. I went to. They assigned me to a work release center, which is inmates that you see. They work in lumber yards and then they come home at the end of the day. Excuse me. So one day I walked into my lieutenant's office. I said, "Hey, do we have a hostage team here?" He's like, "I think so." I said, "I think by law we are required to have one." Now, anybody that works as a CO, you need to feed off something else. Meaning, this is very meticulous. It's very boring. I can't do this every day. Maybe I can work in this area another day. And you get a report with your supervisor. So they weren't having anything with it as far as me pursuing the hostage. They tried to discourage me. So I found out who was on the team. It was actually the guy who was asking about it didn't want to tell me about it. I can say this now, but when I went there, I said, "Where's the training manual? Where's the procedures and everything?" Well, they hadn't trained in 5 years, which is got to be illegal, or it was out of bounds for sure. The first document you ever signed at the Florida Department of Corrections is the one that says you're not guaranteed to be rescued. You're waiving. That's the very first document once you're hired. That
Okay.
told me something. So I wanted to be, there's a guy who I have high respect for, former police chief down here. He's the chief of another city now, but he always said, "Tools in the toolbox. They can never take those away from you. Those are your tools." And I tried to find out about the getting certified, and who knew they didn't want to play ball? So I went online, and I found a guy who had a traveling road show. Former retired NYP detective Dominic Messino, who passed away 9 years ago last month from cancer. He was my mentor. And he was at his road show to certify you, hostage negotiator phase 1 and 2. It was right down the street. Actually, it's right near where you live over there. So I said, "Can I go to this convention?" And boom, they were like, no. I said, "Good. Okay. Well, I got vacation anyway." And I put a package together, gave it to my lieutenant. He said, "I'll send it to the colonel." He said, came back tonight. He never even opened it. So I paid for it out of my pocket. Hostage negotiator phase 1 and 2. Got my little certification, got to play with some neat stuff. Saw a lot of things that not everybody sees. So then hostage negotiator was coming out, phase 3, the final certification was coming out like in 18 months in Tampa. So I kept quiet about it, put in for the time off, got that approved, stayed in Tampa for all the time, came back a certified crisis negotiator. I was immediately put on the team. Then the guy that was running it was a sergeant, and he's like, "Dude, you are the team. I can't do this. I got a kid on the way. I can be on the team, but you need to be the leader." I'm like, "How can I be the leader?" And I just ran with it. At the end of all of this, I've worked on TV and movie projects for consulting. I've met many people. I've taught at conventions. I've taught at St. Petersburg College, a bunch of them, ITT Tech, and people. I started a small little business, and it worked as therapy.
Well, so here's that was the point I was going to make. So a lot of people think as soon as they hear the PTSD label, they think fragile, difficult, not able to work. Those are the things that people think of when they hear PTSD. They feel like it's more of a debilitation than it is something that can be helped and overcome. You've been, and I want to reiterate this, you've had medication, you've had talk therapy, you've had groups at the VA, support from your CB brothers, you've had alternative medicine with me. I know you've done acupuncture. Tell me about the tools that you learned as a hostage negotiator that help you with your own PTSD.
Well, before I get into that part, I want to say something. Where I said it was therapeutic, this is where I was sneaky again with them. I certainly, because at this point, I only got a small rating for my foot injury. That was my first rating for disability. So I was happy about that. Hey, wow, now my medications are covered for all of this, blah, 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 blah. So I was feeling pretty good about that. But I didn't tell them that I had a disability. People knew it from conversations, and I was advising other vets on what I was doing. So it was around the home fire that people knew that I had a disability. So when I got put on the team, you have to role play. So by not telling the department when I was having a frustrating, we're going to training next week, I was always the bad guy. And it wasn't just my institution. It was other institutions around also. I think it was in Ocala, one of the departments up that way, Marion County Sheriff's Office or something. They're like, that guy is great. When I came out of that room being the disgruntled vet about kids on the front lawn leaving beer cans, and I was with a rifle and all this stuff, when I'm screaming in the phone, I was venting. And nobody knew that I was not curing myself, but relieving myself of frustration. I'm being paid from a job that frustrates me to scream at other employees.
Yeah, so you turned a negative into a positive.
Yeah, and they said that guy he plays a good disgruntled vet, man. He's sure he's all wrapped up, and it worked.
Right.
It worked.
So I've got about 3.5 minutes till we wrap up. We've been on for about 40 minutes or so, and I wanted to end the conversation with the other things that you've done for PTSD to help, like more alternative or integrative therapeutics, like, for example, any exercise. I know acupuncture. Have you done anything else outside of the traditional medicine to help with PTSD?
My wife's always got that lavender going all over the place. So she has.
So that's essential oils.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I used to go get a massage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That works.
When you had your acupuncture for your migraines, did you notice that was working for you as well?
Absolutely. I think I even commented on it. I was like, I came in here with a headache. I thought,
because I get people that ask me questions about the acupuncture. One of the common things that I get is, how long does it last? And I think, remembering your case, and it's been a while since I've seen you as a patient, but I want to say on average, most people, not all people that have PTSD suffer migraines. Some do, some don't. But I find that my clients that come to see me for just traditional PTSD that don't have headaches, they seem to do, 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time, and then they need to re-up, have the stimulation again, just like exercise where the endorphins need to build. And
there's a lot of ringing in the ears too, like because I wear hearing aids, so I have the I can't even think. Help me out. What the hell do you call with the ringing in your ears? Tinnitus. Right. So I find that when I'm very stressed, that my ears are ringing, and the tinnitus is insane. And sometimes my jaw hurts.
Yeah, and I want to say the acupuncture helped you with that too, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
I recommend acupuncture to everybody. It should be a requirement.
Well, remember now, I want to say it was the Department of Defense did a study where they basically put the rubber stamp of approval on something called auriculotherapy or battlefield therapy.
Oh,
And
yeah,
that's
in the ear.
the 5 needles into each ear. It's
Mhm.
called auriculotherapy in my world. So I just want people to know that there are other things out there that they can do. Did you ever take nutritional supplements or change your diet at all to see if that worked for you?
I ballooned up as a correctional officer, especially after they operated on my foot. I mean, at my heaviest, I was 361 pounds.
Did you ever go to food for
Oh, yeah,
help
well,
with PTSD?
I internalize a lot of stuff, so I would pack my lunch bag, you're going to McDonald's, hey, grab me this, whatever. And then you're sitting when I work midnights, you sit in a dormitory and all you're doing is eating. And I drank a lot of soda. Then I finally threw in the towel and I had the bypass, I had the gastric sleeve at first. And then I had a problem with GERD. And right before my benefits ran out with DOC, I went and had the actual bypass.
Gotcha.
And there were some supplements going on with that.
Okay. So to end the conversation, is there something you would like to tell other veterans that are suffering from PTSD, something from your heart that you would like them to know or something that they should do to get help?
22 vets a day kill themselves. Please, if you feel that you can't talk to someone, call your local vet center. They got people there that can help you.